Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of the committee, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Seeing none, please note that in the minutes. And I will now turn it to the planner to announce the reason for the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Committee of Adjustment is holding a public hearing in accordance with Section 45 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, in order to consider 3 applications for relief of bylaw 2009-21, being the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the Township of Selwyn. The prescribed notices of the public meetings were provided by prepaid first-class mail to all residents within the 60-meter radius of the subject properties. Ministries and agencies were circulated via email. The subject properties were posted with a sign advertising the public hearings. The notices were also available on the township's website. The notice circulation complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. If a specified person or public body does not make oral submission to the public hearing or make written submissions to the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn before the variances are granted, the person or public body may not be entitled to appeal the decision of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn on the proposed minor variances, you must make written submission to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment of the Township of Selwyn by either fax, email, or Dropbox. The first application on the agenda is application number A823 for the property at 2532 Buckhorn Road. This application seeks relief to reduce the minimum high water setback from 30 meters to 20 meters to an open deck in order to permit a new 65 square foot open deck extension to an existing 490 square foot open deck. We found that this application does meet the 4 tests of the minor variance and recommend it for approval. We find that an archaeological assessment is not warranted for this application. We did receive comments from the Ontario Autonomy Region Conservation Authority, who had no comments of concern for this application. And we have not received any public comments to date for this application.
All right, thank you very much. And Deputy Clerk, is there anyone here that is in favor or against this application?
There's no one here for this application, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I will bring it to committee. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we will move on to 00923.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Application A0923 is for the property at 115 Lakeside Drive. The application seeks relief to reduce to increase the maximum size of a boat shed or pump house from 11.5 meters squared to 28.5 meters squared, as well to seek relief to reduce the minimum side yard setback from 1.2 meters to 1 meter. This is in order to permit the construction of a 164.2 square foot addition to an existing boat shed. This application does meet the 4 tests of the minor variance, and we recommend it for approval. We do recommend that an archaeological assessment is required for this application. Comments received from agencies were from the Autonomy Region Conservation Authority, who submitted comments that an ORCA permit will be required for this development. We have not received any public comments for this application or any further agency comments to this date.
Thank you very much, Chantal. And I understand that the owner, Harley Payne, is with us virtually.
Yes, that's correct. I'm here.
Yes. Is there anything that you would like to add to the planner's report?
No, nothing further for me.
All right. Thank you very much. And did anyone register opposed to this, Deputy Clerk?
We have no one else here for this application, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. I will bring it to committee. Are there any questions with regards to this application? Seeing none, we'll move on to A1023, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Application A1023 for the property at 839 Ward Street. The application seeks relief to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 5 meters to 0 meters to a gasoline pump island canopy. as well to reduce the minimum setback from street center line, which is the county road, from 28 meters to approximately 10 meters, and to reduce the minimum setback from the center street line from a county road from 15 meters to approximately 10 meters. This is in order to permit the construction of a new 1,066 square foot gas bar canopy. We do find that this application does meet the 4 tests of the minor variance and recommend it for approval. An archaeological assessment is not warranted for this application. We've received agency comments from the Otonabee Region Conservation Authority, who have no concern with this application and have not received any further public comments or agency comments for this application.
All right, thank you very much. And I see that Byron Bell is in the audience, who is the owner. Before I turn it over to you, I just want to congratulate you on your 101st year of operation in our township. Very commendable. And is there anything that you wish to add to the planner's report? All right, thank you. Is there anyone that is registered to oppose this, Deputy Clerk?
We have no one here for this application.
All right, thank you. And I'll bring it to committee. Is there anything that anyone has to say? Any questions, comments? No? All right. I will look for a motion to approve these applications, please. Moved by Councillor Henry, seconded by Deputy Mayor Black. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. And we have no deferred matters or correspondence. The minutes of the Committee of Adjustment meeting from February the 28th, 2023. I need a mover for that. Councillor Boyko, seconded by Councillor Koulis. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting is April the 25th. Councillor Henry, seconded by Councillor Boyko. All in favor? That's carried. Our council meeting will begin at 1:00. Thank you. This council meeting for March the 28th, 2023 for the Township of Selwyn will come to order. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. Please observe a moment of silence so that council, staff, and members of the public can quietly reflect on our duty to the community that we are trying to serve. Thank you. Members of the public, staff, presenters, and members of council, please be advised that meetings are broadcast and recorded and made available on the internet. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, please note that. We have the minutes of our regular council meeting on March the 14th, 2023. Can I have someone to move those? Moved by Councillor Henry, seconded by Councillor Koulis. All in favor? That is carried. Is there any discussion out of the minutes? Seeing none, we're going to go to our first deputation. Jeff Cadence is here, the project manager for Canadian Mental Health Association, to talk to us about the Road Ahead Mobile Wellness Clinic. Hi, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for inviting me. I have 10 minutes, so I will try to move very quickly. And I want to talk today about a new initiative that we've launched with Canadian Mental Health Association called the Road Ahead Mobile Wellness Clinic. It is a mobile mental health and addictions clinic with an interesting and really relevant to this group mandate. What we can see here is a photograph of one of the two mobile clinics that we have. And I just recently, just speaking about this, it looks fairly modest on the outside, but inside it's really quite a remarkable facility that we're using. The mobile clinic was launched, soft launch in April of last year, and we've been seeing clients from that point forward. It is part of a pilot project that involves a number of sites across Ontario, funded by Ontario Health, with the mandate to try to address the disparity in access to mental health and addiction supports between those living in urban areas and those living in rural and remote areas. Given that Ontario is made up of largely rural and remote areas with a few really dense exceptions, recognizing that people just don't have the same access to support and care when they're living outside of the urban centers. So as a pilot, we are set out to try to determine what are the needs, the unmet needs, the gaps in service, and the barriers to service that people are encountering living in remote environments, and then design a program that helps to address those gaps and fill those needs, implement it, measure the outcomes so that the Ministry of Health, Ontario Health, can look at what to do with these models that we developed in a longer term context. So when we did a good amount of community outreach in our research phase. A lot of what we were encountering in people as they're experiencing some of the presentations on the screen in front of us, lots of prevalence of anxiety and depression. A lot of that connected with the isolation experience during COVID. Many negative impacts of what we in our field refer to as the social determinants of health. Access to education, access to affordable housing, access to food. A lot of people living in such a state of increased poverty where there are not necessarily the infrastructural pieces to support those, leads to problems and challenges with mental health and leads to substance use and addiction. Encountering a lot of untreated people just living unwell in their homes and in their communities, having never sought support, not being familiar with how to seek support, and often turning to drugs and alcohol as a means of coping with stresses that they're living with and with untreated mental health. A lot of the first primary barrier that we encountered was that of transportation. in most rural environments, there are not public transportation options. Quite often, people may have a vehicle, but they're often choosing between $1.40 a liter and food on the table, and they just cannot literally afford to drive a truck into Peterborough to make an appointment. So they're going without that service. A lot of other people are referring to the just lack of primary care in their community, lack of other supports in their community, lack of connectivity, low broadband or not access to broadband internets for all the virtual services that everybody started offering during the pandemic. And then also a lot of concern around the impressions that it would set to seek help and support. Stigmas around mental health and substance use that are carried in families and in communities, and a reluctance to reach out and ask for help for fear of what the neighbors would say. So these are a lot of the barriers that we had encountered. So with that, we went ahead with our branding and with our name of the Road Ahead Mobile Wellness Clinic. We chose deliberately not to include the words mental health and addiction in the title of the thing, because that itself, we were told, was going to be a barrier to people accessing the service. So friendly, welcoming, warm messaging. This is the road ahead. It is about your wellness. Come on board and we'll see what we can do to help. So our territory is the 4 counties of Haliburton, Northumberland, Peterborough, and the city of Kawartha Lakes. And we have 2 clinics, one west being the Haliburton and city of Kawartha Lakes, one east being us in Peterborough and Northumberland. Our core services are appointment-based counseling and therapy, basic mental health supports. And with that, we also offer access to psychiatry through video conferencing. So if a psychiatric assessment is appropriate or indicated, that we can set that one up. And then collaboration with other supports like Forecast, PRHC, and the Rapid Access to Addictions Medications Clinic. So that's, we're trying to act as a gateway to other services and supports that are out there. We also have nurses on board. So when there are primary health or nursing care needs that might come up alongside the mental health supports or addiction supports, then that is something that we can offer. Anecdote, one thing that we discovered is that there are a lot of people living with untreated mental illness and untreated diabetes. So one of the barriers is they're not actually able to get up and make it to the cab or make it to the car so that they can get into an appointment. So we sent our nurses off to have specialized training in diabetic foot care, so that we can just remove that one barrier that we were running into over and over again. So we're trying to be really practical in our model. We operate from 8:30 to 4:30, and we have appointments that run from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Quickly on our team, we have each team has 2 mental health clinicians and a specialized mental health nurse. Just thinking of our time here. The clients that we're running into, as I said, we're living remote and rurally across 4 counties in need or facing barriers to mental health or addiction services. This presentation, Tanya has a copy of, and she'll be able to share with the community. So if I'm skipping over details, that you'll have access to. Here's a schematic of our vehicle. It's really kind of exciting. So we have a central waiting area with a washroom and a little kitchenette, and then we have a consult room forward and aft. Each room has an emergency exit for safety for our staff and for the clients. It is fully wheelchair accessible with a lift and a ramp. And one thing that we're going to be adding this year is a wheelchair accessible van. So if there are people who are not able to get out of their house for accessibility issues, we'll be able to drive to their house, pick them up in our wheelchair van, bring them to the vehicle, load them up onto the clinic vehicle, and have their appointment. So the one thing that people are often asking is, where do we know, how do we know where this thing is? It is an appointment-based service. So when an individual is seeking support, we ask them to call this central number, or they can be referred to our central number. And when they call, they will get a live answer most of the time. Our intake worker will do the intake assessment over the phone. And based on where they live, we will make an appointment for them to meet with somebody. So if somebody calls in from Warsaw and they say, well, we're going to be nearby at the arena next Thursday afternoon, can we book you an appointment for that time? Our itinerary will rotate on a 2-week cycle based on demand. So if we're getting a lot of calls from a community, we will try and find a place in that community that is centrally located, accessible, and somewhat discreet to park. And then people will make their way to that. So we're finding we're using arenas a lot. We park at the arena in Lakeview, and other municipal spaces seem to be really appropriate gathering places people are familiar with. We can tuck around the back so you're not seen getting on and off. But otherwise, it is a place that people are familiar with. Access. And as demand shifts and changes, our itinerary will shift and change to meet those needs. You know, if we're in a community for regularly every other Wednesday morning, we're not getting any calls from that community, but we're getting a lot of calls from the community down the road, then we're going to shift our schedule. So typically we're working on, we're trying for about a 10-session intervention and then progress people on to other support. So it's a brief support, but we try to address whatever needs people are presenting with. So lots of mental health counseling. We're doing a good number of, or a good amount of marriage counseling, couples counseling, family work, working with youth. Basically responding, you know, that the general practitioners were responding to the needs that we're encountering, or we're getting people to where they need to go if we don't have the correct services. Okay, people had asked for stats. As of a couple of weeks ago, we had served 120 clients. Lots of complexity of issues, but it's not often just I'm experiencing depression. I'm experiencing depression and I'm in conflict with the landlord and I am having a hard time accessing food and energy. So we're finding a lot of complexity in the people that we're encountering. As I said, families in distress, and lots of people, a lot of the work we're doing is logistics and even helping somebody settle and resolve some of their concerns around income stabilization, access to food, all the other things that contribute to mental health. Okay, so I'm not sure I'm doing on time, but that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions that I can answer about this clinic?
Yes, thank you. I will turn it over to our council members. I just wanted to mention that I know there are a lot of people suffering in silence right now with mental health issues, and they aren't aware of this program. And I'm hoping by your coming to see us today that the Herald's always been wonderful to pass along information so that people can be made aware. Is there a chance that people can walk in?
That is one of the golden questions that we run into a lot. Our long-term vision is, yes, we want to have some walk-in capacity. The challenge with that as we're settling in, because we're just settling in and trying to build our model, that we're only going to do walk-in when we can reliably provide it on a very predictable, regular, visible state. So right now we're responding to demand and we're moving our itinerary around that way. Once we really get a handle on what the needs are across the 4 counties, our goal is to say yes, and on Thursday mornings at the Lakefield Arena, there is walk-in, there will be walk-in sessions.
All right.
But we want to be a lot more permanent before we offer that out to the community, and then disappointment might not be.
Right. Okay. I'll turn it over to council. I've got Councillor Boyko first.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your presentation. I was happy and proud to be present for the Lakefield launch. And I was one of those who saw the size of the vehicle and was impressed, and then was even more impressed when I went inside the vehicle and saw how well appointed it was and how well organized and how congratulations on a tremendous program that our community and other communities really need. I have just 2 questions. When you are going to be in Selwyn, will there be communication with the township staff? Will we know that you are there?
That is a great question. Well, at this point, we have the location at the Lakefield Arena, and it has a regular Thursday afternoon session there. What we're doing is we're setting those arrangements individually, and then if there's any concern around whether or staff contact our host. So we work with Amy on the staff team here to just communicate that sort of thing. but I know that's not quite the answer to the question. What we're really trying to encourage people is whenever they are feeling the need for some support, to call and contact us, and we will try to arrange for service to be provided. So rather than say, you know, it's going to happen on a Thursday at this location, say anytime, call. We will work with you to find the next appropriate time where we can call.
Right.
You know, and maybe it's going to be in like, maybe it's going to be going to start or so, whatever our schedule is, mobile.
Right.
So we encourage people to call the number whenever they feel.
No. I understand. I would just hate for you to show up and it's Farmers Market Day, or it's the
Oh,
Jazz and
yes.
Art Festival,
Okay.
or it's something like that.
Yeah.
So a communication might be a good idea to help.
Yes,
you certainly not to-
And in each case, we have been working with hosts.
Good.
Whether it be
Excellent.
principal staff or yeah, that host. Working with
Right.
principal staff, library staff, people.
Perfect.
And yes, we've been working around. Our
Good. And second, if I can, and question, if I can go through you, Madam Chair, how can we help?
Wonderful question. We've had a lot of help. I didn't mention funding. The province has provided the bulk of the operational funds. The purchase of the two vehicles, each being over $500,000. First one was within the funding. The second one was purchased with community contributions and fundraising. So that was a huge aspect to our ability or element to our ability to launch. So I'd say thank you to broadly our community. At this point, the biggest thing we need to do is to get the word out. We need people who know people who might be suffering to be able to say, hey, yeah, I've heard about this thing. Tanya has our brochures in hand. Give them a call. And it's really, that's where a lot of our referrals are ultimately going to be coming from. Paramedics, people, firefighters, people who are doing home care, people who are, you know, in the clerk's office, people who are encountering folks and thinking, okay, yeah, you know, it seems like perhaps you could use some help. Can I tell you about this program that I've heard about? To really get that word out so that people know how to find it.
Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sennis. Jeff, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for coming out and thanks for bringing awareness to these issues in the county. Some know that I'm the Vice Chair of Forecast, Four Counties Addictions and Treatment Services, so I'm very familiar with the issues. And, you know, one of the challenges that I've heard people saying, well, you know, why are they out in the county? Well, unfortunately, you know, media stigmatizes addictions and mental health as the folks living rough in Peterborough. But as you know, there are a lot of people in the county that have mental health and addiction challenges. And that hasn't been met until this mobile opportunity, as I just said, with transportation issues and so on. So, you know, I think it's fine time coming. And really, if there's anything that we can do, as Councillor Boyko has mentioned, to support getting communication out, social media, that sort of thing, we're certainly pleased to help with that.
Very much appreciated. Thank you, everybody, again, for inviting me.
Thank you. Councillor Koulis.
This is just a quick question. Do you have a card? I want to follow up with you.
Yes, there's,
Okay,
and
perfect.
I have my own program.
Yep.
So.
It's about educational outreach, so, yeah.
All right, I don't see any other questions. So I thank you again, and I need a motion to receive the presentation. Deputy Mayor Black and Councillor Koulis, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you again. Right, we have our next deputation is Guy Hanchett for our grandchildren and Mr. Hanchett.
Hi, sorry, I was just waiting for all these people to come in here. They're waiting outside for quite a while. Anyway, thank you for having me here. I'm Pete Hanchett. I've lived in Wakefield in Selwyn for 10 years now, and it feels all that time. I am the president of For Our Grandchildren, a local organization. Advocates on that, trying to reduce climate change, trying to reduce the effects of climate change. And I work here at Wakefield on the Magic of the Marsh and the Wakefield Trail Association. But my big passion is really trying to make the world a livable place for our grandchildren. And we have here in Selwyn a glorious opportunity right now to make a fairly significant difference. And it comes about because we have whoever's doing the slides. Can I go to my second slide here? And there we go. The background of this is that in 2016, Selwyn was part of the whole of Peterborough County signing on to a climate change action plan. And we passed that in a resolution that I got up there. And we adopted in Selwyn targets of 39% and 40%, which are the most ambitious targets in Peterborough County, which is really positive. We're making good progress in the corporate sector. I think I can safely say that. I'm not sure. Lily probably could tell you exactly what good progress we're making, but we're making, as are most municipalities, making very little inroads on the community sector. And the community sector is about 95% of the emissions that come out of our township. This comes from the community sector, not the corporate sector. But the corporate sector, we're doing great. We've got charging stations out here. We're doing really good things. And last time I was here talking about this, I said we should hire somebody to take care of it. And Angie, so I'm hoping for a reception like that today. In any case, we do have this resolution, the Climate Change Action Plan, and it does commit the township to achieving those goals, 39% and 40% of emissions reductions in both those places. In 2018, I had a lunch with Andy Mitchell and saying you need to have some kind of thing on your books that says every action that you take needs to have a climate change lens on it. And he said, Keith, we just passed that resolution too. It was wonderful. But I looked at the resolution and it's not really as strong as it should be. It says we should amend the format of council reports to include a section entitled environmental consideration. I believe that should be made stronger, and I'll explain why in a minute. And then in 2020, we have a letter from Selwyn to the Ontario Energy Board, the OEB, which invites Enbridge's participation in putting in a right direction a pipeline, a methane pipeline up the 8th Line Road to attach to up to 77 locations up there. And in the notes, it says that this letter was classified under information and housekeeping and non-controversial, which I would like to say I don't think it's non-controversial myself, but in any case, I wasn't here to talk to you about that. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. What this means with this installation of a pipeline is that the clients who do hook up to gas along that pipeline will be spending more on energy than they need to do. At the time when all of this, when this started, that probably wasn't the case, but new developments in air source heat pumps, which run off electricity, which in Ontario is mostly greenhouse gas free so far. We will be locked into 4% of emissions that are mentioned in the greenhouse gas emissions targets for this climate change action plan for 40 years. Those will be so much investment that we won't be able to touch it. Enbridge has surveyed the potential clients along here. Their survey, which is filed with the Ontario Energy Board, the OEB, said that they have high demand up for here. But some of the people who are here with me today went and surveyed up and down the road. We didn't keep track of exactly what it was, but our kind of anecdotal experience would be that there was nowhere near 80% of the people said that yes, we're interested in hooking up to gas. And we kind of suspect that part of the reason they said they were interested in hooking up to gas was because they thought, yeah, we can save money. Gas has this reputation, it saves money. We don't think that they were supplied with the information that says you can save even more money by installing an air source heat pump. Selwyn, we have an opportunity to do something that helps our residents. We can let them know that there is an alternative to hooking up the gas. Let them know. And that's what I'm asking for. Principally today, I'm asking for Selwyn to take assertive action, to let our residents know that there's something else available. So what should Selwyn do? Next slide. What should Selwyn do? Inform citizens of the alternatives. And this, I would say should apply to all township residents, not just the ones along the 8 Line Road, because anybody who's not currently hooked up to gas should say, hey, that's not the only way. It might not be the best way. He has this idea that it might be cheaper. So I would suggest that the best form for information like that would be to have an in-person meeting with representation from Enbridge, from perhaps Hydro, from Clean Air Alliance, which has done an enormous amount of research into into the cost of air source heat pumps. And I would include in this, an in-person meeting with that, a whole bunch of people who've already taken that action to install air source heat pumps, because people, if they're like me, don't tend to believe things that come from officials. They tend to believe things that come from people who've actually done it. I would like it to be hosted by Selwyn, if possible, because that would lend authority to it. Show that it's not just some kook up there talking about this stuff. Selwyn would be able to say, we believe in this at least enough to be able to reserve a room and help ordinance. And I would say that for our grandchildren and some of the people who are here as well would be very interested in helping with running a meeting. I've got sort of a wishful thinking there on the bottom one, which is Enbridge might actually decide to withdraw their request if enough of the customers who currently said yes decided to say no after such an information session. I don't really think that would happen, but it's possible. Next slide is what else could Selwyn do? And what I'd like to propose is we could avoid similar inconsistent decisions. Because as I said before, if we had referred to the climate change action plan before writing the letter to the OEB, maybe we would have decided not to send it. Maybe we would have said this contradicts our goals of climate change action. It locks us in to 40 years of more people who are going to be turning greenhouse gases. I would like to change the wording of current paragraph that says we need to have a paragraph of environmental considerations. Add the climate lens to all township actions. What that means, I don't know exactly, but what it means is more or less everything the council does should be able to say, let's refer to the impact of this action on our climate change action. And I'd be very happy to find examples of small municipalities that have passed that have included a climate lens. And my third request, which I don't actually expect you to do, would be to rescind the current invitation to the OEB. Selwyn could take a stand, knowing that we've got an emergency, knowing that the IPCC just came down and said we've got whatever 7 years, another one of these things, we've only got 7 years, knowing how crucial it is. The Selwyn Council could take a stand and say we rescind our application to the, I'm going to call it the OEB, then I'll stop saying it. To the OEB. We could say, we don't want it anymore. I think that would probably be quite risky to do, but maybe there are some other things we could do. Such as having Selwyn Township write a letter to the OEB, such as the one that I've written, several of the other people in this meeting. Enbridge has failed to show that this is necessary. They've failed to show that they've considered all the costs of these things. Council could write something like that. And the reasons you could write that is that air source heat pumps were not really well known in 2020 when you sent in the invitation. The climate emergency is now more urgent than it was then. And council. So I'm going to finish with that. I know our little town, our little country, which contributes so little to this problem, can't solve this problem all on its own. We know that. I can't solve it. I can't solve it. None of us can solve it on our own, but we have an opportunity to have our little town provide an example to other little towns that we can do what is possible to reduce greenhouse emissions. Also, the reason we should do this is to save our residents money on their heating bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanchett, for your presentation. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Boyka.
Through you, Mayor Sanis, thank you very much, Guy, for your presentation and all of you for appearing before us today. I think that all of us on council agree with the goals that you have outlined. And I especially like the point that you made at the end, and that is just because we can't solve everything doesn't mean that we should do nothing. We must do what we can in our small community. Something that you did by sending the letter and when I read that you were going to be making the presentation is you invited me to go back and to reread the reports that I read when I first decided to run for office. And I read a number of the reports, and I came across the reports that talked about us doing exceptionally well in the corporate end of things, exceeding our goals, which I think we all deserve to be very proud of. It's a lot of work. But I also read where we have only advanced our goals with respect to the residents and the businesses by 4%. And I kept reading that we are using 2011 as a baseline, and our goal is to meet the climate targets that we've established for ourselves in reducing our carbon footprint by 2031. And I thought, well, 2031, no, wait, 2031 is only 8 years away. It's not like some Star Trek year way out there. It is in the life of the next council, not this council, but the next council. So it's not that far away. And so I want to thank you for your presentation, and thank you for reminding me to go back and reread all of that. In point 6 in our agenda, we are going to be looking at correspondence for discussion and decision. And our clerk, Angela Chittick, has written a number of things. And I look forward to having a more fulsome discussion about the things that you were talking about and the ideas that you brought forward and those reports when we reach point 6 in our agenda. So thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you.
Was that a question?
No, that wasn't.
No.
I was thanking you for your presentation. Thank you.
And you're absolutely right. We have made really good progress on the corporate front. We really have. But on the 95% that is we're not alone. I just received a copy of the Peterborough City's most recent report, and they have quite bleakly said that they will not achieve their goals by 2031. They will not achieve their goals unless some miracle happens. I don't think we counting on miracles. But as you said, we can do the little thing that we can do in our little community, and perhaps we can show other people what's possible.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Black.
Through you, Mayor Sanis, again, thanks, Guy. We haven't met before, but I've read all of your information, and I got to start on council in the early 90s on an environmental issue, fighting the mega dump on the Bridge North Lakefield Highway, led that group. So I know how challenging it is to make progress, and we made a lot of progress on recycling and so on. I was an early adopter in 1991 of ground source thermal heating and cooling for my house, and put 2 systems in over those years. And I've got a Waterloo biofilter system to make sure nothing gets in the lake from my where I live now. So, I've got a good history of supporting environmental issues. One of the challenges with, where we're going with hydro, and I'm a firm believer in climate change, that we have to make changes to the way we live. But the RECO taught us a lot about our infrastructure last year. When you saw the number of hydro poles that went down, I personally was out of power for 6 days, and total of 8 days of interruptions of power. Fortunately, I have a propane powered generator. It's not a great thing to be proud of, but without it, if it was the middle of winter, we would have been in a lot of trouble. Our whole area would have been in a lot of trouble. So I'm a firm believer in hybrid systems, as air-to-air heat pumps and some kind of a backup furnace, because our hydro is not consistent enough at this point to eliminate all other opportunities, but I think we can make progress on opportunities to switch from propane to natural gas where it makes sense, air-to-air heat pumps. We just don't want, the price of hydro is high already, and it's been held back by the province through COVID and so on. But at some point, we're going to have to spend a lot of money on infrastructure and hydro, which is going to obviously at some point drive the price up. We don't want people going back to wood burning and so on. So I think there's a steady approach moving forward. And if we're at a minimum converting away from propane, which is way worse than natural gas, from what I understand, that is some progress. It might not be the progress that we all want today, but we have to consider the realities of our current infrastructure, and the ability to move ahead with these goals means we have to grow infrastructure. And right now, the current infrastructure, I don't think would handle 10% of people driving electric vehicles. It's just not there. So we can't put ourselves in a unsafe situation down the road from a heating point of view. So I support certainly initiatives that move to green energy. I've done it myself purposely at a higher cost back in those days of putting geothermal in. So I think, council's done a good job in the past in trying to move forward on some of these goals. And certainly when we get to 6A and some of the commitments that we are going to consider moving forward, helping again with the education. And I thank you again for what you're doing. I've been there. It's tough, but stay with it, and we'll move forward in smaller steps, and we'll get there for sure. Thanks for your presentation. Thank you.
All right, so are there any other questions? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to receive the presentation. Moved by Councillor Boyko, seconded by Councillor Henry. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. We are now moving into a question period. We have 15 minutes where one person at a time can ask a question. Were there? Pardon?
Is that us?
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You have to go to the microphone and give your name and your address.
Well, is it on?
Yes.
Okay, so Patty McDonald, my address is 651 Stein Cross Drive. We've asked this question before, but I don't know what the answer is, and I'm not asking it in a negative way because that's not my intention, but I'm curious. I know you're on the 8th line and you're part of the potential customer base for this pipeline that goes through. And I'm not sure where the township offices stand on that, or maybe I'm incorrect and you've got other plans that I'm not aware of, so.
I certainly can't answer that question. I will pass that on to our clerk.
Okay.
So if your question is, would we, would be one of the hookups? Potentially, yes, but we would want to, like anything that we do here, we would look at all the alternatives. So from a heat source, that might be the best option, but we could look at other options as well. Yeah.
Well, just a quick comment on some of the things that were said. I have so much, I can't do that? No. Okay, fine. I was just going to say, thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? None. We will move on to our municipal officers and staff reports for direction. And we have our manager of finance and treasurer, Lane Vance, and Adam Tobin. Lane, are you going to be speaking to your reports?
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. And Adam and his staff supported the report as well. So there may be some of the detailed questions that we need to go over to Adam. I'll just briefly go through some of the highlights of the report. Council's had it in their agenda package. With respect to Woodland Acres, the majority of the expenses relate either to the water and sewer utility charges that we pay to Peterborough Utilities, or the management operating fees that we pay to Peterborough Utility Services. And more recently, I think they're called the Peterborough Utilities Group as our accredited operating authority. So there are a number of operating costs that have increased there. First of all, the base operating fee to PUG has went up by 3% over last year. Water consumption charges that we pay to the Peterborough Water Commission has went up 2.19%. And the related sewer collection charges is now up to 104.46% of the water rate. So definitely those expenses have increased over 2022. We have typical maintenance expenses outlined in the budget, but in 2023, we do expect that we would need to do some additional hydrant maintenance in that area in terms of preparation and repainting. And then over and above that, of course, we ensure that we have transfers to accumulated revenue and reserves to ensure that we have sufficient funds in that area to offset any operational anomalies that may come up, and then also approved capital projects. So an example of that would be we typically budget maybe one water main break a year. If we had two water main breaks, or if we had one that was in a high impact area, that we may have a higher cost than what we budgeted, so we can use some of those operational accumulated revenue numbers to offset those. And our goal all the time is to ensure that we have not a lot of peaks and valleys in our budget, but kind of slow, steady growth, like most of our other budgets that we use. I'll provide a little background just in 2022, looking back a bit for the new council. The fee in that area was reduced by about $360 in 2022. That was because we had retired all of the debt in that area, and we took a look at the operating budget at that size at that time and did a bit of a right sizing of it, but we were able to pass along savings of about $360. So this year we are basically looking at a 2% per household increase, which is an annual increase of just shy of $25, so about $2 a month. That's kind of the high level view, and I'd answer any questions council may have.
Are there any questions for Lane? Seeing none, I need someone to move the recommendation. Moved by Deputy Mayor Black, seconded by Councillor Koulis. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We will now move on to report from Angela Chittick with regards to the task team working group protocol.
Thank you. So council, you'll recall that I think it was back in December, we talked about council committees. And at that time, council did request some further information about a framework to consider the development of an ad hoc committee structure. So we can call this an ad hoc committee, a working group, a task team. There's a number of different terms that we can use, but essentially the idea is that if we were to form such a committee, it would really be very specific about a specific topic. It would be very time bound. We'd have membership on the committee that would kind of contribute to the topic area itself. And we would just want to develop a bit of a framework in terms of how that would be considered by council. So we tried to put a little bit of formality around that. Just want to make it clear that the intention of the ad hoc committee is not to replace, the broader public engagement that we would do for things like our strategic plan or official plan or our planning processes. We have ways that we can engage the public on those broader themes. This is really to kind of get into the meat and potatoes of something very specific. So we did kind of use an example below the Splash Pad Committee. It was an ad hoc committee that was developed or enacted in 2016. It was an outcome of our recreation services plan. And it worked very well. So there were representatives from each of the wards on that committee, as well as a council member. We also had a member of the former Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. So they met, they specifically discussed the ideas around splash pads. They went and looked at some potential sites. They also looked at the costs of, installing a splash pad, the capital, operating, and then they did a little report and their findings were presented to council. So that was a really good example of an ad hoc committee that was formed for a very specific purpose and made some really good informative recommendations for council, which helped make some decision making on the part of our council members. So I have kind of outlined a bit of a methodology if we wanted to think about the establishment of these ad hoc committees. So I'll just go through it briefly. You've read it, but essentially we'd want to be sure council needs to pass a resolution. So we're not going to go away and do a bunch of work if council's not supportive of even thinking about doing this. We would recommend, if at all possible, that we kind of think about the development of such a committee in the latter part of the calendar year, so that we can maybe include some monies in the following year's budget and it works into the work plan. If you sort of throw the ad hoc committee in the middle of a work plan year, then, council's got to make some other decisions about maybe some things that have to be removed off that department's work plan. And that's not to say that can't happen. It's happened before, but we'd like to avoid that if we can. So we've got a little bit of an assessment tool that's been attached. So we kind of want to, what's the purpose of it? Does it align with something that we actually have the authority and jurisdiction over? So no sense forming a committee that we can't do anything to implement. We want to take a look at, is there something else that's happening in the region that maybe council's not aware of, or we're as staff not aware of? So we don't want to duplicate efforts. There might be another alternative tool that would make a little bit more sense that we could suggest to council. Obviously, what those expected outcomes and deliverables would be, maybe kind of thinking about some of the membership on that committee and some of the resources that would need to be put in place to support it. So kind of all that work would be done. There'd be a staff report prepared for council's consideration. And then if council wanted to form such a committee, essentially a terms of reference would be drafted up and you would essentially use the results of the assessment tool so it doesn't go to waste. And then you'd move forward with the enactment of the committee. So just a couple little things to think about too. Obviously, we want to be sure that the membership from council members on the committee, you'd have a maximum of 2. Once you're at 3, you might as well just have a council committee. We're also recommending, in the past, we haven't had any remuneration for folks that have served on an ad hoc committee. So we would kind of recommend continuing with that practice. But if council wanted to do something different, we'd have to have the budget to do that. And then in the terms of reference, we consider what would kind of be the meeting frequency, how you're going to make decisions. Are you going to report your findings to council through just your minutes, or does council want a formal report or a presentation? Would there be some outside expertise that you might want to bring in to support the committee? So that is a kind of a brief overview of the tool that council would use to consider when implementing a committee. And what we would recommend is that we would actually embed this right in the township procedure bylaw. A lot of other municipalities, when you look at their procedure bylaws, have a bit of a section that deals with committee formation. So we think that kind of putting it in the procedure bylaw makes sense. So at this point, just happy to take any questions from council. And if you wish to move forward with kind of the protocol, or if there's anything you wish to add, we can kind of discuss that now. And then if council wants to move forward with this, then we would bring it forward as in the procedure bylaw, likely in later in Q2. And at that time, we do want to sort of take a look at the procedure bylaw, like to do that at least once a term in any case. So we could look at any other amendments we wanted to make to the procedure bylaw at that time as well.
Okay, thank you. I can tell council that there are other townships in the county that are very interested in going in this direction because they've had the same kind of problem where they've had committees that have felt that they have been ineffective and the people on the committees have been frustrated. So in a way, we would be leaders because others haven't taken this tact before, but I'm open to hear from council if you have any questions with what Angie has provided us. Councillor Koulis.
I just have a clarification question. If it's not in the procedure bylaw, where else would it potentially be located? And what are the consequences?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. We could just create a standalone policy.
Deputy Mayor Black.
Thank you through you, Mayor Senes. Great job on the report. I think, the framework logistics all make sense for what we want to do. My only concern is, how do we identify when there are issues out there before they become a crisis? Councils have been through that situation in the past. And I know you talked about strategic plan, but that's every 3 or 4 years. We're going to have an annual public meeting, and maybe there's another opportunity like that for people to bring things forward. But when you get more specific around businesses or parks and recreation, how will we get enough feedback from those groups to identify something that might be an issue or a challenge that needs a deeper dive before it becomes a problem? I guess is my question. I don't disagree with what we're talking about, but just want to make sure we're going to get enough public input to avoid any, higher risk issues, I guess.
Sure. So I think the best answer to that is we do have our strategic plan. And then following that, there are a number of, like, we have our Trails Master Plan, our Parks and Recreation Plan. The library has strategic plans. So almost every area has a sort of a specific guiding document. And within that, it's probably pretty easy to identify some things that an ad hoc committee would contribute to. So like the splash pad, I've already mentioned that, but that's a good example. It came out of the Parks and Recreation strategic plan. So there are examples, I think, that you can find within those areas that you probably would say, you know what, it would make sense. And even at a staff level, we might actually be the ones to recommend that and bring that forward to council.
Just follow up through you, Mayor. So things like the study that was done of the marina, recommendations that come out of that might be something that we would task force, right?
That's exactly right.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Are there any other questions? I actually have 2. On your assessment tool, you mentioned other options. Can you please give me an example of what they might be?
Yeah, so I think in that case, there might be the notion that an ad hoc committee might be the solution to looking at an issue. But as staff, we might think of something different that might be a little less onerous, a little less complicated. And the other thing too is that sometimes we are running the clock and you may not have time to really do a good deep dive on something, and you might need to think about something a little bit different. And it could be we've just purchased Bang the Table software. So it's sort of a public engagement software that you can interact with members of your community to get their feedback on things. So we might even make that recommendation that we might not need an ad hoc committee. It might be better to do it this way. But ultimately, it's up to council to decide how you want to implement your public engagement.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious as to what you considered other options. And the other thing that I'm just asking for more information on the assessment tool, you mentioned expected costs. It's pretty difficult to come up with what something's going to cost before you know what the cost is going to be.
Yeah. So this would really be the cost for the task team functions themselves. So not necessarily what the recommendation or the outcome of the recommendation would be and what those costs were. It's more a matter of, okay, we've got this task team. What are the costs we got to think about? Staff time. Do you have to hire somebody maybe to do a little bit of an assessment for you? Maybe you have to hire an engineer, that kind of thing. Maybe it's public meetings, meeting space, practical things like that.
Okay, I understand. All right. So I don't know if, it doesn't appear there's any other questions. Is council comfortable in moving forward with the recommendation that's in front of us? So all right. So Deputy Mayor Black is moving the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Koulis. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. We are moving on to consent items. Is there anything that anyone wants pulled? Deputy Mayor Black.
5C and 5D.
5C and 5D. D?
D, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
And that's. And Councillor Boyko.
Number 6, I think it's number 1, you answered.
6-1. Okay. Anything else that anyone wants pulled? All right. So let's have a motion to approve what has not been pulled, which is the balance of what's before us. So it would be, let me see. It would be 5A and B, and the rest of the correspondence with the exception of 6-1 and the Peterborough County report. So can I have a motion to approve those as consent?
I'll make that motion if I can make a comment.
Yes.
The comment I wish to make is on 5D.
Hold on a second now. 5D, that, well, we pulled it, yeah.
Okay.
So it's all the other, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to approve those items that were moved by Councillor Boyko, seconded by Councillor Koulis, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, now, so we have 5C and Deputy Mayor Black, you wanted that pulled.
Yeah, just point of clarification, the Orca statement of remuneration says I had 0 meetings attended and got paid for one. I did attend 1 meeting and got paid for 1 meeting, so the report is incorrect. So just clarification.
Okay. Anything else on that?
No.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to 5D and Deputy Mayor Black, you pulled that too.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mayor Sennis. I just, not really a question, but just want to congratulate Adam and staff on such a, is Adam here? Oh, there he is. Yeah, behind. Sorry, didn't see him there. On such a fantastic report on your audit for the water and wastewater systems in Lakefield. I've worked big corporate and been on many compliance committees, and I've never seen a report that came back with 0 issues to deal with. So to have, I think it was 360 some odd points of review in the audit and have 0 come back is fantastic. So I think it's a credit to yourself and your staff, certainly, to making sure that all of our compliance issues are managed in the appropriate manner, and that the folks in the village of Lakefield that depend on that have great confidence in you and their staff and the township that we're doing everything right when it comes to water and wastewater. So thank you again for that.
Thank you. And 100% compliance too. So can't get any better than that.
No.
And keeps us out of jail. So the other thing that, and then so now we move on to 6 1. And Councillor Boyko, you pulled that.
Yes, as I mentioned in my comments following Mr. Hanch's remarks that he made, I wanted to bring this up and repeat that it was very good for me to go back and reread all of the reports of the 2011 baseline that we established. The previous council established, and I think Mr. Hanchett brought this up, that in the recent report that just came out a few months ago before the dying days of the last council, it was celebrated. We were hoping when the climate action plan report was established that we would have a 40% corporate reduction in our carbon output, and it was 53%. And I think that was something to be celebrated. I know it was then, and I think we need to repeat. This council needs to repeat the great work that staff and others did to exceed that target years ahead. Needs to be celebrated. But also in that report, it noted that we had our goal was for the community a 39% reduction by 2031, and we're only at 4%. So therefore, we need to do a whole lot more, because 2031, we know we're going to blink and it will be upon us. And we need to start taking a number of actions now. And I know we are taking some actions, and some of the things that we're doing with respect to the food recycler project, I think is fantastic, and other things that are coming. But I think in order to meet those targets that we have established for ourselves, that we need to somehow summon the creativity and the involvement, the engagement of the community in order to meet the community goals. And in Angie's report, Angie did a very good job, I think, in outlining the 4 bullets there. Here's all the way that we are promoting ideas through which residents can join in and try to help us meet those targets. But those things are obviously not as effective as they need to be, or else we would be beyond the 4%. So my question then is, what more can we do to engage the public, the residents, the businesses, and the builders, developers, those who will be developing all of the infilling that will be happening in Lakefield and other development? What can we do as a township to further engage residents and businesses and builders so that we can meet those targets? How can we further inform, which was Mr. Hanchett's main point, how can we inform them of alternatives, of ways of engagement, of ways that they can save money by advancing this goal? By simply saying we've established a goal, now here, help us meet it, I don't see that as a very effective selling tool to engage people. But perhaps if we can do as we are saying in the report, that we are presenting alternatives, we are presenting ways that they can save money, we're presenting ways that but how could we do it in a more effective way? So that is the question that I am presenting to council, and perhaps through council staff, of how do we move on from here?
So the question should be to staff.
Yes.
Yes. So Angie?
Wow, you didn't give me a hard question.
Oh no, piece of cake. Piece of cake.
Yeah, so I'm sure Lily can weigh in here as well. But we have to remember that we are just one piece of the partnership here. And on the community level, there are things that we can help and support, but we can't do it alone for sure. So I can just tell you in my time here, the things that have been effective are things where we are able to actually partner with residents. that has been effective. So whether it's like the tree planting program, the food cycler program, we've done rain barrel, rain subsidy programs, those have been very effective. So people genuinely have a desire and want to do better. They need a little bit of help sometimes with resources, and it can just be resources in terms of matching dollars or something like that, or connecting them with a resource. So I'll maybe just let Lily talk about the feasibility study that we do have on the work plan this year in the department, but we see that as an opportunity, and I'm going to date myself, and Lane is actually going to laugh at me. But we had the old ORT program. Janice remembers too. And I don't need Ontario Renewable. Thank you. Yeah. So for some people, you may remember that, but it was a very effective program. Essentially, it was an opportunity for residents to take advantage of loans to make improvements in their home. And we see this opportunity for a feasibility study to actually kind of reinvigorate that idea of the ORT program. Lane's going to, be mad at me over there, I'm sure, because from a logistical perspective, there's management around it, but that gets people doing something. And, we can talk, we can promote, but when we can partner, we do see results. So I'll maybe just let Lily chat a little bit about that.
If I could, Madam Chair, just before Lily speaks, one of the reports that I reread was the Partnership for Climate Protection Milestone Report. It outlines community actions and results from 2018 or 2011 to 2018, and it's a long and impressive list of partnerships, and I think it's tremendous. So I guess I'm not asking you to change what you're about to say, but my question is going to be, and as perhaps you can respond to this, is how can we invite more? How can we invite more engagement from not just residents, but from businesses and builders? And so perhaps I'm going to be asking for a staff report to come back, not the answer to be immediate, but a staff report to come back. Okay, sorry for interrupting.
Through you, Madam Chair. So I can speak definitely more to the home energy loan program or home energy efficiency program. They are programs that are being implemented by municipalities. There's currently funding available for feasibility studies and program development. And that is a program that could have a significant impact on our community's greenhouse gas emissions. It would probably be a loan program where we could offer loans to residents to do energy efficiency upgrades. It could also include elements of climate resiliency or electric vehicle readiness in that program as well. And so we are currently exploring partnerships and funding to allow us to do a feasibility study that would evaluate our existing building stock in Selwyn Township, how effective that program, a home energy loan program, would be, and the financing mechanisms that would go behind supporting a program like that. And then I would just speak to, you mentioned sort of furthering engagement and on the business side as well. So we are involved in things. We actually are part of the advisory committee for Green Economy Peterborough. So we do promote that to local businesses. And that is a program that helps businesses look at energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reductions. And we're certainly working, there's the County Climate Action Committee as well. So we're looking at a marketing program where we could sort of increase our awareness among residents of greener homes, the Canada Greener Homes program as well. So there's certainly lots of elements going on that could be in support of a reduction of our community's greenhouse gas emissions.
So, Councillor Boyko, what Lily has just talked about is included in the recommendation that we're sending to Mr. Hanchett. And part of it, we have to depend on funding, which would be through grants, because again, we don't have, the money tree doesn't have a lot of leaves on it. So, are you satisfied with that answer? Okay. All right. Is there anything that anyone else wanted to speak to on this 6-1? Councillor Henry? No? Yeah.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Not really sure if this is proper, but going back to 5A, which I know we've already moved on from. But if we're looking at what Councillor Boyko is saying here and how we work as a township for this, engaging locals to be doing some things is great. And there's certain cost transfers that we can benefit from there with things being put on the end user. But if I go back to 5A and I look at our dock, sorry, let me bring it up here. The Lakefield Campground docking system tender. I understand that we're looking for the best price on everything, but so for a savings of $6,000, we just sent $120,000 out of our community. And I read that there's no environmental impact other than there's no foam going to be used in these devices, but now we have someone having to drive that much further to get to our Lakefield system. So are we taking a true look at the environmental impacts of our actions? And are these just boxes that we're ticking off, or are we actually looking at the bigger picture? One, we just sent money out of our township. We could support local business. We could be supporting local families that are employed there. And we're actually taking a larger look at how we are managing our environmental contributions or achieving the percentages that we need to.
So you did kind of twist that around because it really wasn't appropriate because we'd already approved it. But anyways, I guess that is a fair question. When we are looking at tenders, should we be looking at how greenhouse gases affect our decisions?
Through you, Madam Chair. I would actually go back to what Mr. Hanchett had said in his presentation. He referenced something called the Climate Lens tool. That is something that municipalities look at integrating. It's typically a list of questions that staff might consider as they are looking at a project or decision. So that just ensures that we are integrating climate change or the environment as a consideration in our projects. It can go alongside an environmental consideration section like what we already have in our report, but it certainly provides a little bit more education and awareness to staff on how to look at how climate change might affect our projects, how we can consider greenhouse gas reductions and some of those things. So I think if it was the direction of council, we could certainly bring a report back on what a Climate Lens tool might look like.
I think that would be very good. Do you need a motion for that to happen? All right. So would you like to make that motion, Councillor Henry? Seconded by Deputy Mayor Black. All in favor? That is carried. Madam Clerk, do you have enough information to proceed? Thank you. Okay. All right. So if we're finished talking about 6.1, then I need a motion to approve all of the items that had been pulled. Moved by Councillor Henry. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Black. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we move on to other new and unfinished business. And we have a special meeting that we are setting up. Angie?
Yes, thank you very much. And I appreciate everybody getting back to me so quickly. So the April 20th date did work for everyone. So we would just need a motion to adopt that as a special meeting, and it would be from 9 to noonish.
All right. So everyone has it in their calendars?
Yeah, we'll send out a meeting invite as well.
Okay. And I need someone to move that. Councillor Henry, seconded by Councillor Koulis. I know you had your pen up. Councillor Boyko, all in favor? That's carried. I would like council to please note the library board volunteer appreciation dinner is going to be held on June the 26th at 6 p.m. at the Ennismore Community Center. Please put it in your calendars. We have, I believe, 160 that have said they are coming to the dinner. So it gives you the magnitude of the numbers that we have of volunteers for our library. And we will now move on to, we'll move into our closed session, but before we do, I would like proof by environmental mitigation measures agreement for part lot 28 concession 12 Nicholson. 2023-022 funding agreement for the court security and prisoner transportation program. Can I have someone to move that, please? Councillor Boyko, seconded by Councillor Henry. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And I need a motion to go into closed. Councillor Boyko, Deputy Mayor Black, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. So we'll be going into the committee room, correct? Thank you, everyone.